The crack echoed through the diner like a gunshot. Officer Wayne Briggs's hand connected with the 15-year-old's face so hard the boy's head slammed against the window. Blood sprayed from his split lip. Water glass shattered on the floor. "Look at me when I'm talking to you, boy." Briggs grabbed the teenager's collar, yanking him up for everyone to see. "Trash like you needs reminding of your place." Every customer froze. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved to help. The cop's badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights as he smiled. He had no idea he'd just made the biggest mistake of his career. That boy's father was an FBI agent. Before we continue, comment below where you're watching from and subscribe. This story will show you exactly what happens when a corrupt cop picks the wrong family to destroy. Officer Wayne Briggs slammed his cruiser door so hard the whole vehicle shook. His hands were trembling, not from fear, from rage. The traffic stop had gone sideways. Some hotshot lawyer in a Mercedes had blown through a red light, and when Briggs pulled him over, the man had the audacity to threaten him. "Do you know who I am? I'll have your badge. I'll have you directing traffic in a school zone for the rest of your miserable career." Briggs had wanted to drag that smug lawyer out of his fancy car and teach him some respect. But there had been witnesses, other cars passing by, people with phones. So he'd let the lawyer go with a warning. A warning. His jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. 22 years on this force. 22 years of keeping this town in line. And some rich lawyer thought he could talk to Wayne Briggs like that. He needed coffee. He needed to sit down and calm himself before he did something he'd regret. Ruth's diner was just ahead. He pulled into the lot, killed the engine, and sat there for a moment trying to get his breathing under control. His reflection stared back at him from the rearview mirror. Red face, bulging vein in his forehead, eyes that looked like they belonged to a man ready to explode. "Get it together, Wayne." He stepped out of the cruiser and walked toward the diner, his boots heavy on the pavement. The bell above the door chimed as he pushed inside. The smell of coffee and fried food hit him immediately. A few regulars sat at the counter. An elderly couple in the corner booth. A young mother with a little girl near the window. And in the back booth, 3 black teenagers laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Briggs felt his blood pressure spike. At that same moment, Jalen Carter was doing an impression of his basketball coach that had his friends nearly falling out of their seats. "Man, you should have seen Coach Thompson's face when Marcus hit that three-pointer." Deshaun grabbed a menu, grinning so wide his cheeks hurt. "I thought he was going to have a heart attack right there on the court." Jalen laughed, the sound bright and natural. For real, though, he was like this. He bugged out his eyes and let his jaw drop open in exaggerated shock. Deshaun slapped the table. Marcus nearly spit out his water. "Stop, stop." Marcus held up his hands, wheezing. "I can't breathe. You're gonna kill me before I even get my burger." Jalen kept going, now mimicking Coach Thompson's deep voice. "That's what I'm talking about, son. That's the kind of hustle that wins championships. You hear me? Championships." Deshaun was crying actual tears now. "Oh my God. That's exactly how he sounds. Exactly." The 3 boys dissolved into laughter, the pure kind that comes from being young and happy and surrounded by friends. They didn't notice the heavy boots approaching their table. They didn't see the shadow falling over them. They didn't see Officer Wayne Briggs standing at the edge of their booth, his hand resting on his belt, his eyes narrowed into slits. Something funny. The laughter died instantly. Jalen looked up, his smile fading. The officer's face was red, almost purple. A vein throbbed visibly in his forehead. His whole body seemed to vibrate with barely contained fury. "No, sir." Jalen's voice came out steady, despite the sudden knot in his stomach. "We were just talking about basketball practice." "Basketball practice." Briggs repeated the words like they were an insult. "So you think it's appropriate to sit here cackling like a bunch of hyenas in a public establishment?" Deshaun's hand froze halfway to his water glass. Marcus pressed himself back against the booth seat. Neither of them spoke. "We weren't being that loud, sir." Jalen kept his tone respectful, his eyes down. We didn't mean to disturb anyone. Didn't mean to disturb anyone. Briggs leaned closer, his breath hot on Jalen's face. The stench of cigarettes and coffee made Jalen want to gag. You think I care what you meant? You think your intentions matter to me, boy? The word hung in the air. Boy, loaded with history, loaded with contempt. Sir, we're just having dinner. Jalen's heart was pounding now, but he kept his voice calm. If we were too loud, we apologize. We'll keep it down. Behind the counter, Ruth Gibson had stopped wiping glasses. She watched the scene unfolding with growing dread. She'd seen this before, she'd seen Briggs before, and she knew exactly where this was heading. Oh, you'll keep it down. Briggs's hand shot out and grabbed Jalen's collar, yanking him halfway across the table. You'll keep it down because I'm telling you to keep it down. You understand me? Yes, sir. Jalen's voice came out choked. The collar was tight against his throat. Yes, sir. I understand. I don't think you do. Briggs's grip tightened. I don't think you understand at all. See, the problem with your kind is you don't know your place. You think you can sit here laughing and carrying on like you own the place, like you belong here. Marcus found his voice. Sir, please. We didn't do anything wrong. We were just... Did I ask you to speak? Briggs's head snapped toward Marcus, who immediately shrank back. Did I give you permission to open your mouth? Marcus shook his head frantically. Then shut it. Briggs turned back to Jalen, who was still half suspended by his collar, his hands gripping the edge of the table to keep from being dragged completely across it. Now. Where were we, sir, please? Jalen's voice cracked. You're hurting me. Something flickered in Briggs's eyes. Something dark. Something hungry. Hurting you. His voice dropped low. You don't know what hurt is, boy, but I can teach you. Ruth stepped out from behind the counter. Officer Briggs. Her voice carried across the diner. Is there a problem here? Briggs didn't even look at her. Stay out of this, Ruth. This doesn't concern you. This is my diner. Everything that happens here concerns me. Ruth took another step forward. Those boys are my customers. They haven't broken any laws. Now, Briggs did turn his eyes blazing. Are you interfering with an officer performing his duties? What duties? Ruth shot back. Harassing teenagers for laughing. Since when is that a crime? The other customers watched in frozen silence. The elderly couple in the corner booth. The young mother clutching her daughter close. The regulars at the counter who suddenly found their coffee cups fascinating. Nobody moved to help. Nobody said a word. Briggs released Jalen's collar with a shove that sent the boy back against the window. He took 2 steps toward Ruth, his boots echoing on the linoleum. You want to be careful, Ruth. He stopped just inches from her, using his height to loom over her. Real careful. I'd hate to have to cite you for code violations. Fire hazards. Health department issues. Amazing how many problems a business can have when it's not cooperating with local law enforcement. Ruth's chin lifted. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. Briggs smiled, but there was no warmth in it. About how things work in this town. About who keeps things running smoothly. And about what happens to people who get in the way. He turned back toward the booth where Jalen was rubbing his throat. His friends pressed against him on either side like they could somehow protect him. Now. Briggs crossed back to the table in 3 long strides. Where were we? We weren't doing anything wrong. Jalen's voice came out stronger now, fueled by something that felt dangerous, felt like defiance. We were just laughing. We weren't hurting anyone. We weren't breaking any laws. Briggs stopped. His head tilted slightly. A smile spread across his face that made Jalen's blood run cold. What did you just say to me? I said we weren't doing anything wrong. Jalen met the officer's eyes. Because we weren't. Deshawn grabbed Jalen's arm under the table, squeezing hard. A warning. Stop. Don't push it. But Jalen couldn't stop. Something had broken loose inside him. You can't just grab people for no reason. Jalen's voice shook, but didn't break. That's not how the law works. The diner went absolutely silent. Briggs stood perfectly still for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost gentle. Did you just tell me how the law works? I'm just saying, did you just presume to educate me about my job? No, sir. Briggs moved so fast, Jalen didn't even see it coming. The backhand caught him across the cheek with the full force of 22 years of unchecked authority. The crack echoed through the diner like a gunshot. Jalen's head snapped sideways, his face slamming against the window hard enough to rattle it in its frame. His water glass toppled. Ice and water spilled across the table, dripping onto the floor. Pain exploded across Jalen's face. White hot. Blinding. He could taste blood where his teeth had cut the inside of his cheek. His vision blurred with tears he refused to let fall. The entire diner had turned to stone. Deshaun sat frozen, his mouth open in a silent scream. Marcus had gone pale as ash, his hands gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had turned white. At the counter, a coffee cup slipped from someone's fingers and shattered on the floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. Nobody even looked at it. The young mother had covered her daughter's eyes, pulling the little girl's face against her chest. The elderly couple in the corner sat rigid with shock, decades of similar memories flooding back. Briggs straightened his uniform shirt, adjusted his badge, looked down at Jalen with satisfaction spreading across his face like oil on water. Not so funny now, is it, boy? Jalen pressed his hand against his burning cheek. The heat was incredible, throbbing, pulsing with every heartbeat. He could feel the outline of Briggs's fingers imprinted on his skin, but he didn't cry. He wouldn't give this man that satisfaction. You see, Briggs addressed the entire diner now, his voice carrying to every corner. This is what happens when people forget their place. This is what happens when they need reminding about how things work around here. His eyes swept the room. The customers looked away, one by one. The elderly man, the young mother, the regulars at the counter. Everyone suddenly fascinated by their hands, their plates, anywhere but what had just happened. That's assault. Ruth's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Briggs turned slowly. Excuse me? Ruth stepped forward, her whole body trembling, but her voice rock steady. That's assault on a minor. In front of witnesses, in my diner. I don't see any witnesses. Briggs looked around the room, that ugly smile still on his face. Anyone here see anything? Silence. The elderly man stared at his coffee. The young mother clutched her daughter and looked at the floor. The regulars at the counter might as well have been statues. Didn't think so. Briggs turned back to Ruth. Now why don't you go back behind your counter and mind your own business? I am minding my business. Ruth pointed to the ceiling. See that dome up there? The black one with the blinking red light? Briggs's eyes flickered upward. That's my new security system. Ruth's voice gained strength. Installed it last month after some vandalism. HD quality. Records everything. And here's the best part, Officer Briggs. She leaned forward slightly. It uploads straight to the cloud, automatically, every minute of every day. Something changed in Briggs's face. Just for a moment, a flicker of uncertainty, maybe even fear. But it disappeared quickly, buried under decades of never facing consequences. We'll see about that. He straightened his shoulders, puffing out his chest. Technology can be unreliable. Systems fail. Data gets corrupted. The threat was clear. Ruth didn't back down. My nephew set it up. He works in IT. Very thorough. Very redundant. Very secure. Briggs stared at her for a long moment. Ruth stared back. Finally, Briggs turned toward the door, but he paused at Jalen's booth, leaning down until his face was inches from the boys. Stay in line, he said softly. Next time might not be just a slap. The bell above the door chimed cheerfully as he walked out, a mocking counterpoint to the horror he'd left behind. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Ruth was there, hurrying to the booth with an ice pack wrapped in a clean towel. Here, honey. Hold this against your face. Jalen took it mechanically. His hands were shaking so badly, he almost dropped it. Deshaun let out a breath he'd been holding for what felt like hours. "Jay. Man. Are you okay?" Jalen couldn't answer. His mouth wouldn't form words. All he could do was press the ice pack against his throbbing cheek and try to remember how to breathe. "I'm calling your father." Ruth already had her phone out. "This ends today." Marcus finally found his voice. "That was messed up. That was so messed up. He can't just do that. He can't just hit people for no reason." But even as he said it, they all knew the truth. Briggs had been doing exactly that for years, and nothing had ever happened to him. Nothing ever changed. The young mother gathered her things and rushed out with her daughter, not looking at anyone. The elderly couple left cash on their table and shuffled toward the door, their faces drawn with shame and fear. At the counter, the regulars muttered to each other. "Did you see that? Someone should do something." "But what can anyone do? He's a cop. Nothing ever changes in this town." The words floated across the diner like a verdict, like a sentence, like the way things had always been and would always be. Jalen sat in the booth, ice pack pressed to his face, and tried not to believe them. Ruth paced behind the counter, phone pressed to her ear. The line rang once, twice. "Mr. Carter. This is Ruth Gibson from the diner on Main Street. You need to come here right now. Something happened to your son." A pause. "No, sir. He's not badly hurt. But you need to come. And Mr. Carter, you need to come prepared." She hung up and looked at Jalen. "Your father's on his way, honey. Just hold on." Jalen nodded. The ice pack was already starting to melt, cold water running down his wrist. The pain in his cheek had settled into a deep, constant throb. Every heartbeat sent a fresh wave of agony through his face. But worse than the pain was the humiliation, the helplessness. The knowledge that a grown man in uniform had struck him across the face in front of everyone and nobody had done a thing to stop it. His eyes stung with tears he refused to shed. Not here, not now, not ever in front of strangers. Deshaun leaned closer. "We saw everything, Jay. Me and Marcus. We'll tell them exactly what happened. So did everyone else in here." Marcus's voice was bitter. "Lot of good that'll do." Jalen looked around the diner. The customers who remained were very carefully not looking at him. Guilt and fear warring on their faces. He understood. He hated it, but he understood. This was how it worked. This was how it had always worked. People saw things. People knew things. But people stayed quiet because speaking up meant becoming a target. And nobody wanted to be a target. The minutes crawled by like hours. The bell above the door chimed. Jalen didn't look up. He couldn't bear to see who it was. Another cop, maybe. Or Briggs coming back to finish what he started. But then he felt it. The shift in the air. The way the few remaining customers went completely, utterly still. Heavy footsteps crossed the floor. Measured, controlled, deliberate. A shadow fell across the booth. Jalen forced himself to look up. Derek Carter stood there, his tall frame filling the space. His face was completely still, like granite, like something carved out of stone. But his eyes were alive, burning, taking in everything at once. The ice pack against his son's face. The red mark visible beneath it. The dried blood at the corner of his mouth. The way Deshaun and Marcus pressed close on either side like bodyguards. Under Derek's open jacket, something glinted on his belt. Metal. Official. He moved forward, and it was like watching a force of nature approach. Every step precise. Every movement controlled. The kind of control that spoke of immense pressure barely contained. Dad. The word broke something in Jalen. All the fear and pain and humiliation he'd been holding back came rushing to the surface. His eyes burned. His throat closed up. Derek crossed the remaining distance and crouched down beside the booth. His hands were impossibly gentle as he cupped his son's face, turning it toward the light. The handprint stood out stark against Jalen's brown skin, red darkening to purple at the edges. the unmistakable shape of fingers branded into his cheek. A muscle jumped in Derek's jaw. His eyes went hard as steel. "Tell me everything." His voice was low, quiet, dangerous. Jalen opened his mouth, but Ruth got there first. "That monster Briggs came in here looking for trouble." She stepped closer, her apron twisted in her fists. "The boys were just laughing, just being kids. And he walked right up and grabbed your son by the collar, threatened him, then hit him so hard his face hit the window." Her voice cracked. "A child, in my diner, in front of everyone." Derek's eyes never left his son's face. "Is that true?" Jalen nodded. "We were just talking about basketball, making jokes about Coach Thompson. We weren't even loud. We weren't bothering anyone." He grabbed me. Jalen's hand went to his throat where bruises were already forming. "Said I needed to learn my place. Then I said we weren't doing anything wrong and he—" His voice broke. Monica Carter burst through the door, still in her nursing scrubs. She'd broken every speed limit between the hospital and here. "Jalen. Baby." She pushed past Derek and slid into the booth, her hands already moving with professional precision, checking his pupils, probing gently along his cheekbone, examining the cut on his lip. "Does it hurt to open your mouth? Any dizziness ringing in your ears?" "I'm okay, Mom." But his voice was small, young, not okay at all. Monica's eyes met Derek's over their son's head. In that look past everything that didn't need to be said. The fury, the fear, the promise of reckoning. "You said you have security footage." Derek turned to Ruth. "Show me." Ruth nodded and led him to the back office. The door closed behind them. In the cramped space, an old computer hummed on a cluttered desk. Ruth pulled up the security software with shaking hands. "Right here." She pointed to the timestamp. "Watch." Derek watched. He watched the boys laughing, watched Briggs enter his face already twisted with rage, watched him approach the booth, watched him grab Jalen by the collar, watched the argument, watched the backhand. The sound came through the speakers. That crack, that terrible crack. He watched his son's face hit the window, watched the water glass fall, watched Briggs lean down and threaten a child. "Stay in line. Next time might not be just a slap." Derek's hands had clenched into fists at his sides. His knuckles were white. "I need you to send me this footage." His voice was perfectly calm, perfectly controlled. Right now. Ruth was already reaching for her phone. "What's your email?" He gave it to her. Then he said something that made her freeze. "Mrs. Gibson, I need to tell you something, and I need you to keep it completely confidential." Ruth looked up at him. Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out his credentials. FBI, Special Agent Derek Carter, Civil Rights Violations and Public Corruption. Ruth's mouth fell open. "I've lived in this town for 3 years." Derek tucked the credentials away. "I keep it quiet because of my family. But I need you to understand what this means. I have the authority to investigate this. I have the resources to pursue it. And I have every intention of making sure that officer faces justice." Ruth stared at him for a long moment. Then, something shifted in her face. Something like hope. "I've watched that man terrorize this town for 20 years, she said quietly. Watched him hurt people. Watched him get away with it every single time. Nobody could stop him because nobody had the power." Her eyes met Derek's. "But you do." "Yes, ma'am. I do." "Then God help him." Ruth's voice was fierce. "Because you're the answer to 20 years of prayers. The footage is sent, backed up to 3 places. They're not making this one disappear. Thank you." Derek moved toward the door. "Don't tell anyone about who I am. Not yet. I need time to build this case properly." Ruth nodded. "Whatever you need. Just promise me one thing. Name it. Don't just get Briggs, get all of them. Everyone who's protected him. Everyone who's looked the other way. Burn the whole rotten system down." Derek held her gaze. "That's exactly what I intend to do." He walked back to the booth where his family waited. The diner was nearly empty now. The last of the regulars had slipped out while he was in the office. "Can you stand?" Derek asked Jalen gently. Yeah. Jalen slid out of the booth, wincing as the movement sent fresh pain through his face. Yeah, I'm okay. He wasn't okay. Derek could see it in every line of his body. The way he held himself. The fear that hadn't fully left his eyes. The trembling he was trying so hard to hide. Let's go home. They walked out together, Derek's arm around his son's shoulders, Monica on Jalen's other side. Deshaun and Marcus followed close behind. At the door, Derek paused. Ruth. Thank you. Ruth Gibson stood behind her counter, watching them go. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Take care of that boy, she called. And Agent Carter. Derek looked back. Make them pay. The drive home was silent. Jalen sat in the back seat staring out the window at the streets he'd known his whole life. The same houses, the same trees, the same small-town Georgia afternoon. But everything felt different now. Darker, more dangerous. Monica kept glancing back at him, her nursing training warring with her desperate need to just hold him. Derek drove with both hands on the wheel, his knuckles still white. His mind was already working. Evidence, witnesses, chain of command, pattern of behavior. He knew how these cases went. He knew how hard they were to prove. But he also knew something else. He knew he was going to win. At the house, Jalen went straight to his room. Monica followed with fresh ice and pain medication. Derek stood in the hallway watching his son curl up on his bed. 15 years old. His baby boy. Struck across the face by a grown man with a badge. Something cold settled in his chest. Something hard and permanent. Dad Jalen's voice was small. Yeah, son. Is he going to get away with it? Jalen's eyes were red-rimmed. Everyone says the cops here always get away with everything. That it's just how things are. Derek crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. He took his son's hand. Listen to me. What happened to you was wrong. It was criminal. And I swear to you on everything I am, it will not go unpunished. But he's a cop. They protect each other. He has a badge. Derek's voice was quiet, but filled with power. But I have something stronger. I have the law, the real law. The kind they can't twist or ignore or make disappear. Jalen studied his father's face. The certainty there. The steel. You really think you can beat them, I don't think. Derek squeezed his hand. I know. Now get some rest. Tomorrow, we fight back. Later that night, long after Jalen had finally fallen asleep, Derek sat alone in his home office. The house was quiet. Monica had gone to bed after making him promise to rest soon. He'd promised. He'd lied. The security footage played on his laptop screen for the 7th time. Each time he heard the crack of flesh on flesh. Each time he watched his son's head snap against the window. Each time he saw the satisfaction on Briggs's face. Derek paused the video, studied that smirk, that arrogance, that absolute certainty that there would be no consequences. He opened a new document. At the top he typed, Operation Clean Sweep. Then he started listing names. Briggs, Chief Roy Patterson, Judge Harrison. Every officer he'd heard whispers about. Every official who'd looked the other way. This wasn't just about his son anymore. This was about every person Briggs had ever terrorized. Every complaint that had been buried. Every victim who'd been silenced. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He opened the message. You should have kept your head down, Carter. Some fights aren't worth fighting. Derek stared at the message for a long moment. Then he smiled. They had no idea what they'd started. They thought they could threaten him, intimidate his family, make him back down like everyone else in this town. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. He turned back to his computer and kept working. At 3 a.m., he finally looked up from his research. His eyes were burning. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. But he had what he needed. The beginning of it, at least. Briggs wasn't just a bad cop. He was part of a system. A network of corruption that touched the police department, the courts, local politicians, and at least one very wealthy donor whose name kept appearing in campaign finance records. Charles Thornton, real estate developer, millions in donations to local politicians, dozens of municipal contracts awarded without competitive bidding, and a very interesting pattern of large payments to the police pension fund right before misconduct complaints disappeared. Derek added the name to his list. Then he opened another document and started building a timeline. Every complaint against Briggs over the past 20 years. Every dismissed case. Every witness who'd recanted their testimony. The pattern was clear. The corruption was deep. And Derek was going to tear it all down. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. A photo this time. Jalen getting into Derek's car outside the diner. Taken from across the street. Zoomed in. Professional. The message below it was simple. Beautiful family. Would be a shame if something happened to them. Derek's blood ran cold. Then it turned to fire. He saved the message. Screenshot. Backup. Evidence. Then he typed a reply. I know who you are. I know what you've done. And I'm coming for every single one of you. He didn't expect a response. He didn't get one. It didn't matter. The hunt had begun. And Wayne Briggs had no idea that the boy he'd slapped in that diner was the son of the one man in this town who had the power, the skills, and now the personal motivation to destroy everything Briggs and his friends had built. Derek looked at his case files one more time. The names, the dates, the connections. Tomorrow he would go to the police station to file a formal complaint. He knew it would be dismissed. He was counting on it. Every refusal to investigate. Every buried complaint. Every threat. Every attempt at intimidation. All of it was evidence. All of it was building the case. Derek closed his laptop and walked to the window. Outside, the street was dark and quiet. Somewhere in this town, Briggs was probably sleeping soundly, confident that he'd gotten away with it again. Enjoy it while it lasts, Derek thought, because your world is about to come crashing down. He checked on Jalen one more time. His son was sleeping fitfully, the bruise on his face dark against the white pillow. Derek stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching his child breathe. Then he went back to his office and got back to work. The night was long, but Derek Carter wasn't tired. He was just getting started. The next morning came too fast. Derek was already awake when his phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Ruth Gibson's name flashed on the screen. He answered on the first ring. They took it. Ruth's voice cracked with panic. Her breathing was ragged like she'd been running. Slow down. Derek sat up in bed. Took what the whole security system. Ruth's words tumbled over each other. They ripped it right out of the walls. I just opened up the diner and the wires are hanging everywhere. The dome is gone. The recorder is gone. Everything is gone. Derek's blood went cold. When must have been overnight. I closed at 10. Everything was fine. Now it looks like someone took a crowbar to my ceiling. She took a shaky breath. They didn't even try to hide what they did. They wanted me to know. Don't touch anything. Derek was already out of bed reaching for his clothes. I'm on my way. Monica stirred beside him. What's wrong? They stole Ruth's security system. Derek pulled on his jacket. The footage is gone. Monica's face went pale. Oh God, Derek, what are we going to do? We still have the copy she sent me. Derek checked his phone, confirming the email was still there. They don't know about that. Not yet. He kissed her forehead. Stay with Jalen. Don't let him go to school today. Don't let anyone in the house. You're scaring me. Good. Derek's voice was hard. Be scared. Be careful. These people aren't playing games. The drive to Ruth's diner took 12 minutes. Derek spent every second of it cataloging what he knew and what he needed to find out. The theft had happened within 8 hours of the incident. That meant someone had made a call. Someone with authority. Someone who knew exactly what was on that footage and exactly how damaging it could be. This wasn't just Briggs covering his tracks. This was organized, coordinated, fast. Derek pulled into the diner's parking lot at 7:03 a.m. Ruth was waiting outside, her arms wrapped around herself despite the warm morning air. Two of her regular customers stood nearby, murmuring to each other. Derek stepped out of his car and looked up at the building. Even from outside, he could see the damage. A section of the roof overhang had been pried open. Wires dangled from the hole like exposed nerves. "Show me." Ruth led him inside. The diner looked like it had been violated. Ceiling tiles had been torn down and thrown aside. The security dome was gone, leaving only a ragged hole and a tangle of cut cables. They came through the back. Ruth's voice was hollow. Picked the lock clean. Didn't break anything except what they came for. Professionals. Derek photographed everything. The damaged ceiling. The cut wires. The empty mounting bracket where the recorder had been. The back door, with its pristine lock showing no signs of forced entry. Professionals with badges. Ruth added bitterly. That's who did this. Derek examined the back door more closely. She was right. This wasn't a burglary. This was a surgical strike by people who knew exactly what they were doing. "This is good," he said quietly. Ruth stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Good. They stole my evidence. The only proof of what that monster did to your son. They proved there was evidence worth stealing." Derek turned to face her. "This isn't random vandalism. This is confirmation of a cover-up. And a cover-up is a federal crime." Ruth's expression shifted as understanding dawned. "They're scared," Derek continued. "Scared enough to commit breaking and entering. Scared enough to destroy evidence. Scared enough to make mistakes. But without the video, we still have the copy you sent me." Derek kept his voice low. "And now we have proof of obstruction. They just made my case stronger." Ruth's eyes widened. "You can use this. Every crime they commit trying to cover up the first crime just adds to the charges." Derek allowed himself a small, cold smile. "They think they're protecting themselves. They're actually burying themselves deeper." He spent another 20 minutes documenting the crime scene. Then he made a decision that Ruth questioned but didn't try to stop. He drove to the police station. The building sat on Main Street like it owned the town. 2 stories of red brick and self-importance. Derek had passed it 100 times in the 3 years he'd lived here. He'd never had reason to go inside, until now. The front desk officer barely glanced up when Derek walked in. Middle-aged, overweight, a coffee stain on his uniform shirt. His nameplate said, "Officer Hendricks. Help you? I need to speak with Chief Patterson." Derek kept his voice calm, professional. "Regarding an assault on my son yesterday." Hendricks's eyes flickered with something. "Recognition, maybe. Or warning." "Chief's busy. I'll wait. Could be a while." Hendricks still hadn't looked up from his phone. "He's got meetings all morning." "Then I'll wait all morning." Derek didn't move. "Tell him Isaiah Carter is here about Officer Briggs's actions at Jensen's diner." The name hung in the air. Hendricks's thumb stopped scrolling. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Hendricks reached for his desk phone and murmured something too low to hear. He listened, nodded, and hung up. Third door on the right. Chief Roy Patterson's office was exactly what Derek expected. Dark wood furniture, American flag in the corner, photos on the wall showing Patterson shaking hands with politicians holding up fish accepting awards. The man himself sat behind a massive desk, his silver hair perfectly combed, his uniform crisp and spotless. He smiled as Derek entered, but the smile never reached his eyes. "Mr. Carter." Patterson gestured to a chair. "What can I do for you this morning?" Derek remained standing. "I'm here to file a formal complaint against Officer Wayne Briggs for assaulting my son yesterday at Jensen's diner." Patterson's smile didn't waver. "Ah, yes. The unfortunate incident. Officer Briggs has already filed his report." "Incident." Derek repeated the word flatly. He backhanded my 15-year-old son across the face hard enough to split his lip. According to Officer Briggs's report, he was responding to disruptive behavior that could have escalated into a public disturbance. Patterson shuffled some papers on his desk. He used minimal contact to maintain order. Minimal contact. Derek's hands clenched at his sides. There are witnesses who saw exactly what happened. Yes, we have statements. Patterson's eyes glittered. Several witnesses have confirmed that your son and his friends were being loud and disrespectful. Officer Briggs acted appropriately to de-escalate a potentially dangerous situation. Dangerous. Derek's voice was ice. 3 teenagers laughing about basketball practice were dangerous. Teenagers can be unpredictable. Patterson leaned back in his chair. Officer Briggs made a judgment call. I support my officers. There was security footage. Was there? Patterson's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. I understand Miss Jensen's system suffered some technical difficulties last night. Such a shame. These older systems can be terribly unreliable. Derek stared at the man across the desk. The smugness. The absolute certainty that nothing would happen. That nothing could happen. Are you telling me you won't investigate this assault? I'm telling you there's nothing to investigate? Patterson spread his hands. Unless you have clear evidence of misconduct, these are just unsubstantiated allegations. We take all complaints seriously, Mr. Carter, but we can't act on hearsay. My son's face isn't hearsay. The bruise on his cheek isn't hearsay. Teenagers roughhouse. Patterson's smile turned patronizing. Boys get into scrapes. Who knows how your son really got that mark? Something shifted in Derek's chest. The cold fury that had been building since yesterday crystallized into something harder, something sharper. I see. Patterson nodded clearly, believing he'd won. Now, if there's nothing else, I have a busy schedule. Derek turned toward the door. Then he stopped. One more thing, Chief Patterson. Patterson looked up. Derek met his eyes, held them. This isn't over. For just a moment, something flickered across Patterson's face. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. Then the mask snapped back into place. I think it is, Mr. Carter. Have a good day. Derek walked out of the office, his footsteps echoing on the tile floor. As he passed the break room, he heard laughter. Voices carrying through the open door. Did you hear Briggs put that kid in his place? About time someone taught them some respect. The boy's father came in this morning. Thinks he's gonna file a complaint. More laughter. Good luck with that. Patterson already took care of it. Derek kept walking. His face showed nothing, but inside he was memorizing every voice, every word. They had no idea they were being hunted. Outside, the morning sun had turned harsh. Derek sat in his car for a long moment processing everything he'd seen and heard. The stolen security system. Patterson's dismissal. The officers laughing about what Briggs had done. The coordinated effort to bury this before it could become a problem. This wasn't just one bad cop. This was a system. A machine designed to protect its own and crush anyone who challenged it. Derek pulled out his phone and made a call. Catherine Martinez answered on the second ring. She was his contact at the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. They'd worked together on 3 cases over the past decade. Derek. Her voice was warm. It's been a while. What's going on? I need to report a civil rights violation. Derek's voice was steady. Local police officer assaulted my son, 15 years old. Unprovoked attack in front of multiple witnesses. Catherine's tone shifted immediately. Professional. Focused. Tell me everything. Derek laid it out. The assault, the threats, the stolen security footage. Patterson's refusal to investigate. The evidence of coordinated obstruction. When he finished, Catherine was quiet for a moment. You said you have a copy of the footage. Yes. Clear video, multiple angles, timestamps intact. Send it to me now. I'll start the review process immediately. If it's as clear as you're describing, we can have preliminary authorization for intervention within days. Derek felt something loosen in his chest. The first real hope since this nightmare began. Thank you, Catherine. Don't thank me yet. Her voice held a warning. Derek, these cases can get complicated. Local departments don't like federal interference. And if there's corruption involved, it goes deeper than you might expect. I know. Watch your back, and keep building your case. Document everything. Derek hung up and sent the footage. Then he drove home. Jalen was sitting at the kitchen table when Derek walked in. The bruise on his face had darkened overnight purple and angry against his brown skin. Monica sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder. Dad. Jalen looked up. What happened? Derek sat down across from his son. He looked at that bruised face, at the fear and hope warring in those young eyes. I filed a complaint with Chief Patterson, and he refused to investigate, said there wasn't enough evidence. Jalen's face crumpled. So that's it. He just gets away with it. No. Derek's voice was firm. That's not it. I have contacts at the Department of Justice, federal investigators who handle exactly this kind of case. They're reviewing the footage right now. Really? Hope flickered in Jalen's eyes. You mean like the FBI? Like the FBI. Derek allowed himself a small smile. These people have the authority to investigate local police. Chief Patterson can't stop them. Officer Briggs can't hide from them. Monica squeezed Jalen's shoulder. Your father knows what he's doing, baby. He's going to fix this. Jalen nodded slowly. The fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Trust. Faith in his father. Derek wished he felt as confident as he sounded. The afternoon passed quietly. Too quietly. Derek worked in his office, organizing evidence, documenting everything he'd learned. Monica tried to maintain normal routines, but her eyes kept going to the windows, checking the street, watching for threats. Jalen stayed in his room texting with Deshaun and Marcus. His friends were scared too. Their parents had told them not to talk about what happened, not to anyone. At 3:47 p.m., Derek's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered anyway. Mr. Carter. The voice was male, unfamiliar, professional. You filed a complaint this morning against Officer Briggs. Who is this a friend? The voice was smooth. Someone who wants to help you avoid making a terrible mistake. Derek's hand tightened on the phone. Is that so? Your son was involved in an unfortunate misunderstanding. These things happen. But pursuing this further would be unwise. For everyone involved. Are you threatening me? I'm offering perspective. The voice remained calm. Reasonable. This town has a way of working. People who understand that way live comfortably. People who don't. A pause. Well, things can become difficult. Derek stood at his office window looking out at the quiet street. The normal houses, the normal cars, the normal lives hiding so much darkness. Let me offer you some perspective, Derek said quietly. I don't respond well to threats, and the people I work with respond even worse. You're making a mistake, Mr. Carter. No. Derek's voice was ice. You are. He hung up. 30 seconds later, another text arrived from an unknown number. Beautiful family. Beautiful home. It would be a shame if something happened to either. Attached was a photo. Derek's house. Taken from across the street. Recent. Maybe today. Derek stared at the image. Then he saved it. Documented it. Added it to his evidence file. They were watching him. Following his family. Trying to intimidate him into silence. They had no idea who they were dealing with. At 6:15 p.m., Jalen came downstairs for dinner. The family ate together, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. Monica had made Jalen's favorite meal, fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens. Nobody talked about the case, nobody talked about Briggs. They talked about school, about basketball, about Marcus's chances of making varsity next year. For an hour, they were just a family having dinner. Then Derek's phone rang. Catherine Martinez. He stepped into the hallway to answer. Catherine, any news? The review is complete. Her voice was tight, controlled. Derek, the footage is exactly what you described. Clear assault on a minor. Unprovoked. Unjustified. We're drafting intervention paperwork now. Derek closed his eyes. Thank God. There's something else. Catherine paused. We started pulling records on Briggs. He has a history. Complaints going back 15 years. All dismissed. All buried. How many? 17 documented complaints. 3 settlements paid out by the city. All sealed. All hidden. 17. Derek's stomach turned. 17 times this man had hurt someone. 17 times the system had protected him. It gets worse. Catherine's voice dropped. The judge who dismissed most of these complaints, Harrison. Same judge who sealed the settlements. Same judge who signed off on evidence destruction orders in at least 2 cases. Derek's mind was racing. They're connected. Briggs, Patterson, Harrison. They're all protecting each other. That's what it looks like. But there's something bigger. Catherine hesitated. We found financial irregularities, large donations to police pension funds, campaign contributions that don't add up, all traced back to shell companies owned by the same person. Who? Charles Thornton. Derek knew that name. Real estate developer. One of the wealthiest men in the county. His face was on billboards. His name was on buildings. Thornton is connected to this. We don't know how deep it goes yet. But his money is everywhere. Police charities. Judge Harrison's re-election campaign. The mayor's office. If this is what it looks like, Derek, you're not just dealing with a corrupt cop. You're dealing with a corrupt system. Derek leaned against the wall, processing this information. When can you move days? Catherine said. We need to verify a few more things. But Derek, this is big. Really big. Bigger than just your son's case. My son's case is all I care about right now. I know. Catherine's voice softened. And I promise you we're going to get justice for him. But I need you to be careful. These people have power, resources, and clearly they're not afraid to use them. They threatened my family today. Then you understand what you're dealing with. Watch your back. Trust no one local. And whatever you do, don't let them know you have federal support. Derek hung up. He stood in the hallway for a long moment, the weight of everything pressing down on him. Charles Thornton, a man with enough money to buy judges and police chiefs. A man whose corruption had apparently been poisoning this town for years. This wasn't just about Briggs anymore. This was about dismantling an entire empire. Derek walked back to the dining room. Monica and Jalen looked up at him expectantly. Good news, he said carefully. The federal investigators are moving forward. They've found enough to justify intervention. Jalen's face lit up. Really? They're going to arrest him soon. Derek sat down. They need a few more days to verify some things. But it's happening. Monica reached across the table and took his hand. This is really going to be over. Yes. Derek squeezed her hand. But until then, we need to be careful. Stay alert. Don't go anywhere alone. The relief in the room was palpable. For the first time since yesterday, they could breathe. Derek didn't tell them about Charles Thornton. Didn't tell them how deep the corruption went. Didn't tell them that the people threatening their family had more power than he'd initially realized. They'd been through enough. At 11:30 p.m., Derek sat alone in his office reviewing everything he'd gathered. Briggs, Patterson, Harrison, Thornton. 4 names. 4 pillars of a corrupt system that had been crushing this town for decades. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Another photo. This one showed Jalen walking to school 2 days ago. Before any of this happened. A timestamp in the corner. Proof they'd been watching his family even before the incident at the diner. The message below was simple. Last warning. Drop it. Or lose everything. Derek stared at the photo of his son. Then he opened a new document and typed 4 words. They have no idea. He added it to his evidence file and kept working. Somewhere in Maplewood, the men who thought they ran this town were sleeping soundly, confident in their power, certain of their protection. They didn't know that the walls were already closing in. They didn't know that every threat, every photo, every attempt at intimidation was being documented and filed. They didn't know that Derek Carter had spent 20 years taking down people exactly like them, and they definitely didn't know what was coming next. 3 days passed. 3 days of waiting. 3 days of hope building slowly in the Carter household. 3 days of believing that justice was finally coming. On the morning of the 4th day, everything fell apart. Derek's phone rang at 5:47 a.m. He grabbed it before the second ring, not wanting to wake Monica. Catherine's name on the screen. "Tell me good news," Derek said quietly, slipping out of bed and walking to the hallway. Silence on the other end. The kind of silence that makes your stomach drop. Catherine Derek. Her voice was different, strained, broken. "I'm so sorry." Those 3 words hit him like a physical blow. He leaned against the wall for support. What happened? "The intervention has been pulled." Catherine's words came out rushed, like she was afraid she might not get through them. "Someone above my pay grade made a call. Way above. All I know is there was contact from a major political donor in your district. Suddenly, we're being told there are insufficient grounds to proceed." Derek's hand tightened on the phone. Insufficient grounds. There's video evidence, witness statements, a documented pattern of abuse going back 15 years. I know all of that." Catherine's voice cracked. "Derek, I've never seen interference this fast or this complete. The order came from so high up that nobody would even tell me who authorized it. One minute we were drafting arrest warrants, the next minute the entire case was shut down. Charles Thornton, almost certainly. But I can't prove it. Nobody can prove anything because nobody will talk." Catherine paused. "Derek, whatever you're onto, you've scared someone with serious influence. The kind of influence that can make federal investigations disappear overnight." Derek closed his eyes. The hallway seemed to spin around him. "What about the footage?" "That's the other thing." Catherine's voice dropped. "I tried to access the file this morning to make backup copies. It's corrupted, completely unrecoverable. Our tech team says it looks like the corruption was embedded in the original file before it was ever sent to you. A time-delayed virus that triggered once it was copied enough times." Derek felt the blood drain from his face. "The footage is gone. I'm sorry." The raw pain in Catherine's voice was genuine. "I'm so sorry, Derek. I wanted this one. I really wanted this one. Can you do anything?" "Not officially. Orders are orders." "But Derek, off the record, watch your back. These people clearly aren't playing by any rules. If they can shut down a federal investigation with a phone call, there's no telling what else they can do." The call ended. Derek stood in the hallway, phone in hand, staring at nothing. His mind refused to process what had just happened. Months of careful work, destroyed in a single night. The video, gone. Federal intervention, blocked. Charles Thornton's reach extended further than Derek had ever imagined, all the way to Washington, all the way to people who could kill a DOJ investigation with one phone call. He walked to his office on autopilot, opened his laptop, tried to access the video file. Error, file corrupted, unable to recover. He tried again, and again, and again. The same message every time. Derek slammed his fist on the desk so hard his coffee cup jumped. 20 years of federal law enforcement. 20 years of taking down corrupt officials and criminal enterprises. And he'd been outmaneuvered by small-town corruption backed by big-money influence. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered anyway. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." The same smooth voice from before. "I trust you've received some disappointing news." Derek's hand shook with rage. "Who are you?" "A friend." The voice was almost cheerful. "A friend who tried to warn you. A friend who gave you every opportunity to walk away. You destroyed the evidence. You killed the investigation. I didn't do anything." The voice hardened. "I'm simply a messenger. But I'll pass along some free advice. Go back to your life. Hug your son. Thank God it was just a slap, because next time it could be so much worse." The line went dead. Derek sat in silence, surrounded by useless files and corrupted evidence. Everything he'd built over the past 4 days had turned to ash. And somewhere in this town, Wayne Briggs was walking free. Untouchable. Protected by a system that Derek couldn't penetrate. Dad. Derek looked up. Jalen stood in the doorway, still in his pajamas. The bruise on his face had faded to yellow and green, but it was still visible. Still a reminder of what had happened. The hope in Jalen's eyes nearly broke Derek's heart. "Is it today?" Jalen asked. "Are they arresting him today?" Derek couldn't speak. He couldn't find the words to tell his son that justice wasn't coming, that the system had failed them, that the people with power and money had won. Jalen's smile faded. His eyes searched his father's face and found the answer there. No. Jalen's voice was small. "No, they can't." "You said—" Derek stood and crossed the room. He pulled his son into a hug, holding him tight. "I'm sorry." Derek's voice broke. "I'm so sorry, son." Jalen's body went rigid. Then he started to shake. "They got away with it." Jalen's words came out muffled against Derek's chest. "They actually got away with it. Everyone said they would, and they did. This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Jalen pulled back, his eyes red. "It's always over. It's never different. They do whatever they want, and nobody stops them. Nobody can stop them." The defeat in his son's voice was more painful than anything Derek had ever experienced. "Jalen." Derek gripped his shoulders. "Look at me." Jalen looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I know this looks bad. I know it feels like they've won. But they haven't. Not yet. I am not giving up. Do you understand me? I am not giving up on you." "How?" Jalen's voice cracked. "The video's gone. The investigation's dead. Chief Patterson won't do anything. What's left me?" Derek's voice was fierce. "I'm left. And I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've taken down men more powerful than Wayne Briggs, more powerful than Charles Thornton. This is what I do. This is who I am." Jalen stared at his father, wanting desperately to believe. "They think they've won because they destroyed our evidence." Derek continued. "But evidence can be rebuilt. Witnesses can be found. And the one thing corrupt men always do is keep committing crimes. They can't help themselves. And eventually they make a mistake. What if they don't? Then I'll make them make a mistake." Derek's eyes burned with determination. "But Jalen, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Jalen wiped his eyes. He nodded slowly. "I trust you, Dad. Then believe me when I tell you this isn't over. It's just beginning." Derek spent the morning reorganizing his strategy. The video was gone. Federal intervention was blocked. Official channels were compromised. Fine. He'd find another way. He started making calls. Old contacts from his years with the FBI. People who owed him favors. People who had their own reasons to hate corruption. At 11:23 a.m., his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown local number. "We need to talk. I can help. Meet me at the old gas station on Miller Road. 3 p.m. Come alone." Derek stared at the message. It could be a trap. Another attempt at intimidation, or worse. But it could also be something else. A crack in the wall. Someone on the inside who wanted out. He texted back, "How do I know I can trust you?" The reply came 30 seconds later. "You don't. But I have information that can take them all down. Briggs, Patterson, Thornton, all of them." Derek made his decision. At 2:45 p.m., he drove to the abandoned gas station on Miller Road. The building had been closed for years. No cameras, no witnesses. The perfect place for a secret meeting, or an ambush. Derek parked behind the building where his car couldn't be seen from the road. He checked his weapon, then stepped out into the afternoon heat. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then a figure emerged from behind the building. A young man in civilian clothes, walking fast, looking over his shoulder every few steps. Derek recognized him. Deputy Marcus Webb. one of the younger officers at the Maplewood Police Department. He'd seen him around town but had never spoken to him. Agent Holloway. Webb's voice was barely above a whisper. He stayed close to the building, avoiding open ground. Thanks for coming alone. Derek's hand stayed near his weapon. How do you know who I am? Everyone knows who you are now. Webb glanced nervously at the road. Briggs has been running his mouth, calling you a troublemaker, saying you need to be taught a lesson. Why are you here? Because I can't do this anymore. Webb's voice cracked. I've watched Briggs terrorize people for 3 years, watched Patterson cover it up, watched good cops quit because they couldn't stomach what was happening. I thought if I kept my head down, stayed quiet, eventually it would change. He laughed bitterly. It never changes, it just gets worse. What information do you have? Webb reached into his jacket. Derek tensed, but Webb only pulled out a small flash drive. This is a copy of the original security footage from the diner. Webb held it out with trembling hands. The night they broke in and stole the system, I was the one who handled the digital uploads. Before they destroyed the drive, I copied everything to a secure cloud account. Then I downloaded it to this. Derek stared at the flash drive. How do I know it's real? Because I was there when they wiped it. Webb's eyes were haunted. I watched Briggs and Sergeant Mills break into that diner. I watched them rip the cameras out of the ceiling. I watched them laugh about it afterward. Why didn't you say something? Webb pulled up his sleeve, revealing a long, faded scar running from his wrist to his elbow. I tried speaking up once, my first year on the force. 2 days later, 3 guys in masks jumped me in the parking lot, cut me up pretty good, said next time they'd kill me. Derek took the flash drive, turning it over in his hands. Why now? Why risk everything to help me because of your son? Webb's voice hardened. He's 15 years old, same age as my nephew. When I saw what Briggs did to him, when I saw that video, something broke inside me. I can't keep being part of this. There's more, isn't there? Derek watched Webb's face. More than just the video. Webb nodded. I've been collecting information for 2 years, hoping someday someone would come along who could actually do something with it. Financial records, internal memos, audio recordings of Briggs and Patterson discussing cover-ups. He pulled out a second flash drive. Everything I have is on here, enough to burn them all. Derek took the second drive. Why didn't you go to the FBI yourself? Because Thornton has people everywhere. Webb's voice dropped to a whisper. The FBI, the DOJ, state police. I didn't know who to trust, but then I found out who you really are, what you really do. And I knew you were the one person who might be able to stop them. This makes you a witness. Derek's voice was serious. You understand what that means. If this goes to trial, you'll have to testify. Webb's face was pale, but determined. I know. They could come after you, your family. My family is why I'm doing this. Webb met Derek's eyes. I have 2 kids, a daughter who's 12 and a son who's 9. What happens to them if they grow up in a town run by men like Briggs? What happens when my son is 15 and he laughs at the wrong moment in the wrong diner? Derek nodded slowly. Respect for this young deputy growing with every word. I can protect you. Witness protection if it comes to that. I don't want protection. Webb's voice was fierce. I want justice. For your son. For everyone Briggs has ever hurt. For this whole damn town. Derek extended his hand. Webb shook it firmly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Webb glanced at the road again. They're going to figure out someone talked, and when they do, things are going to get very dangerous very fast. I know how to handle dangerous. Webb managed a small smile. I'm counting on it. Derek drove home with the flash drives secured in his jacket pocket. For the first time since Catherine's call this morning, he felt something like hope. The video was intact. He had inside information from a cooperative witness. The case wasn't dead after all. At 5:30 p.m., he pulled into his driveway. Monica's car was there. Jalen's light was on in his bedroom window. Everything looked normal. Derek walked inside, already planning his next moves. He'd verify the footage tonight, start organizing Webb's evidence, build a new case from the ground up. Monica met him in the hallway. Her face was white. "Derek?" Her voice trembled. "Ruth Gibson just called. What's wrong?" "It's the deputy. Marcus Webb." Monica's eyes filled with tears. "Someone attacked him. He's at Memorial Hospital. They're saying he might not survive the night." The flash drives in Derek's pocket suddenly felt heavier, colder. "He was just with me." Derek's voice was hollow. 3 hours ago. He was just with me. They must have seen him." Monica grabbed his arm. "Derek, if they know he talked to you?" Derek was already moving. He grabbed his keys, his weapon, his badge. "Stay here. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone." "Derek, wait. Where are you going? Memorial Hospital? It's too dangerous. That man risked his life to help our son." Derek's eyes burned. "I'm not leaving him alone." The drive to Memorial Hospital took 20 minutes. Derek spent every second praying he wasn't already too late. The emergency room was chaos when he arrived. Nurses rushing past, machines beeping, doctors shouting orders. Derek found Webb's room on the 3rd floor. 2 uniformed officers stood guard outside the door. Officers from the same department that Webb had just betrayed. Derek approached them. "I need to see him." "Sorry, sir." One of the officers held up a hand. "Family only." "I'm FBI." Derek flashed his credentials. "This man is a material witness in a federal investigation." The officers exchanged glances. Neither of them moved. "We have orders." The second officer's voice was cold. "No visitors." "Whose orders? Chief Patterson's." Derek felt the rage building in his chest. The same men who had tried to kill Webb were now guarding his room, controlling who got in, controlling what information got out. "Step aside." Derek's voice was ice. "Sir, we can't. You can and you will." Derek stepped closer, his eyes boring into theirs. "Or I will arrest both of you for obstruction of justice and throw you in federal prison so fast you won't know what happened." The officers hesitated. "Your choice." Derek didn't blink. "But make it fast." The first officer moved aside. The second followed a moment later. Derek pushed through the door. The sight that greeted him made his blood run cold. Marcus Webb lay in the hospital bed, barely recognizable. His face was swollen beyond recognition. Tubes and wires connected him to machines that beeped steadily. Bandages covered his arms, his chest, his throat. A doctor looked up from a chart. "Are you family federal agent?" Derek showed his badge again. "How bad is it?" The doctor's face was grim. "Multiple facial fractures, 3 broken ribs, severe trauma to the throat." He paused. "The damage to his larynx is extensive. Even if he survives, he won't be able to speak for months. Maybe ever." Derek stared at the battered man in the bed. The man who had risked everything to help his son. Was he conscious when they found him? No. A jogger discovered him in Riverside Park around 7 p.m. The doctor shook his head. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Maximum damage without being lethal. They wanted him alive. Alive, but silent. The words echoed in Derek's mind. They'd destroyed Webb's voice, made sure he couldn't testify, made sure he couldn't tell anyone what he knew. His family. "They've been notified." The doctor's voice softened. "Wife and 2 kids. They're driving down from Atlanta now." Derek moved to the bedside. Webb's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. One eye was swollen completely shut, the other flickered beneath a bruised lid. "Can he hear me?" "Maybe. We don't know for certain." Derek leaned close. "Deputy Webb." "Marcus. It's Agent Carter." No response. Just the steady beep of the heart monitor. "I got the drives." Derek's voice was low. "I'm going to finish what you started. I promise you. They're going to pay for this." Webb's fingers twitched slightly. Maybe a response. Maybe just a muscle spasm. "You're a brave man." Derek straightened up. "Your family should be proud." He walked out of the room. The two officers watched him pass but said nothing. In the parking lot, Derek sat in his car for a long time. The flash drives were still in his pocket. Webb's evidence. Webb's courage. The price Webb had paid for trying to do the right thing. Derek pulled out his phone. The message he typed was simple. You made a mistake. You made this personal. And now I'm going to destroy everything you've built. He sent it to every unknown number that had contacted him. Then he started his car and drove into the night. The game had changed. They'd silenced Webb. They'd corrupted the evidence. They'd blocked federal intervention. But they'd also made Derek Carter angrier than he'd ever been in his life. And angry was exactly how he did his best work. Derek didn't go home that night. He couldn't. Not with the fire burning in his chest. Not with Marcus Webb's battered face seared into his memory. Not with 2 flash drives in his pocket that could bring down an entire corrupt empire. He drove to the Liberty Business Center downtown. A glass office building where he'd rented a private suite 3 years ago under a corporate shell company. Standard procedure for sensitive cases. The space offered everything he needed. Secure internet, controlled access, privacy. And most importantly, a location they didn't know about. At 11:47 p.m., Derek plugged the first flash drive into his laptop. The video loaded instantly. There it was, crystal clear, multiple angles. The diner interior captured in perfect high definition. Derek watched the footage play from beginning to end, his jaw tightening with each passing second. Briggs entering the diner. The rage already visible on his face. The boys laughing in the booth completely unaware. Briggs approaching. The confrontation. The threats. And then the slap. The sound came through the speakers with sickening clarity. The crack of flesh on flesh. Jalen's head snapping against the window. The blood appearing at the corner of his mouth. Derek paused the video on Briggs's smirking face. Got you. He created multiple backups immediately. Cloud storage, encrypted external drives, email to 3 secure accounts. This footage would never disappear again. Then he opened the second flash drive. Marcus Webb had been thorough. Incredibly thorough. Financial records going back 5 years. Internal department memos. Audio recordings. Photographs. A treasure trove of evidence documenting systematic corruption at every level. Derek started organizing the files. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but he couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. At 2:15 a.m., he found the first major connection. Bank transfers. Large amounts moving from shell companies owned by Charles Thornton directly into the police pension fund. The transfers happened quarterly like clockwork, and each transfer coincided with a dismissed complaint or buried investigation. Derek cross-referenced the dates. March 2019. $50,000 transferred. Same week, a brutality complaint against Briggs was dismissed by Judge Harrison. September 2020. $75,000. A civil rights lawsuit against the department was quietly settled and sealed. June 2022. $100,000. 3 officers accused of evidence tampering had their cases dropped. The pattern was undeniable. Thornton was paying for protection, buying silence, funding corruption. Derek kept digging. At 3:48 a.m., he found the audio recordings. Webb had been careful. Smart. He'd hidden a voice-activated recorder in the break room capturing conversations that the officers never imagined anyone would hear. Derek pressed play on the first file. Briggs's voice filled the room, casual and confident. Patterson says Thornton's happy with how we handled the Gibson situation. Evidence is gone. The kid's father is backing off. Everything's under control. Another voice. Sergeant Mills. What about the federal investigation? Briggs laughed. Thornton made a call. It's dead. You think some FBI puke from Washington is going to come down here and mess with us? Not when Thornton has senators in his pocket. Must be nice having that kind of protection. It's not protection. Briggs's voice turned smug. It's insurance. We keep Thornton's developments running smooth, make sure nobody causes problems for his projects, and he makes sure nobody causes problems for us. Everybody wins. Except the people we're supposed to be protecting. A third voice. Younger. Nervous. Derek recognized it as Webb. Briggs's tone shifted immediately. You got something to say, rookie. No, sir. Just thinking out loud. Then stop thinking. Briggs's voice hardened. You want to keep your job, keep your family safe, then keep your mouth shut and do what you're told. That's how things work around here. That's how they've always worked. The recording ended. Derek sat back in his chair, a cold smile spreading across his face. They'd just confessed to everything. Obstruction, corruption, conspiracy, all captured in their own words. He kept listening, file after file, recording after recording, each one more damning than the last. Patterson discussing how to handle complaints. Just lose the paperwork. Tell them we investigated and found nothing. They'll give up eventually. They always do. Briggs bragging about the traffic stop that led to the diner incident. Some lawyer thought he could talk to me like that. Threatened to file a complaint. So I went to cool off and found something better. Some punk kid who needed to learn his place. Judge Harrison's voice on a phone call. Tell Thornton his contribution is appreciated. I'll make sure the paperwork gets lost. By 5:30 a.m., Derek had enough evidence to bring down half the town. But he wasn't finished. He pulled up property records, cross-referenced names, followed the money. The picture that emerged was staggering. Charles Thornton didn't just own real estate, he owned the system. His donations controlled Judge Harrison, his payments protected the police department. His influence reached all the way to Washington, where a single phone call could kill a federal investigation. Maplewood wasn't a town, it was a fiefdom, and Thornton was its king. Derek's phone buzzed at 6:15 a.m. Monica. Derek. Where are you? I've been trying to reach you all night. I'm safe. Derek's voice was hoarse from exhaustion. I'm working. Working on what Monica's voice held an edge of panic. The hospital called. They said you were there. They said Webb might not survive. What's happening? I can't explain right now. Derek rubbed his burning eyes. But I need you to trust me. Everything I'm doing is going to protect our family. Protect Jalen. Derek. You're scaring me. Good. Being scared will keep you careful. He paused. Is Jalen okay? He's asleep. He doesn't know about Webb yet. Don't tell him. Not until I get back. When will that be? Soon. Derek looked at his laptop screen at the mountain of evidence he'd assembled. I just need a few more hours. He hung up and got back to work. At 8:23 a.m., Derek made a call he'd been dreading. Robert Callahan answered on the second ring. The assistant director of the FBI's Public Corruption Task Force had been Derek's mentor for 15 years. They'd taken down 3 governors, 2 congressmen, and more dirty cops than Derek could count. Derek. Callahan's voice was gravelly with morning coffee. This better be important. I've got a Senate hearing in 2 hours. It's important. Derek's voice was flat. A local cop assaulted my son. I tried to go through proper channels. DOJ shut it down after a donor made a call. Silence on the other end. Your son, 15 years old, slapped across the face in front of witnesses. The department stole evidence. Threatened my family. Beat a cooperating witness, nearly to death. Jesus. Callahan's tone shifted from annoyance to attention. Tell me everything. Derek laid it out. The assault. The cover-up. The stolen footage. The blocked investigation. Webb's flash drives. The audio recordings. The financial connections to Charles Thornton. When he finished, Callahan was quiet for a long moment. You're describing a RICO case, he finally said. Conspiracy, corruption, civil rights violations. This is exactly what my task force exists for. That's why I'm calling you instead of going back to the DOJ. Derek's voice was tight. Thornton has people everywhere. I don't know who to trust anymore. You can trust me. Callahan's voice hardened. Send me everything you have. I'll review it personally. If it's as solid as you're saying, I can have authorization for intervention within 48 hours. I have video evidence, Bob. Clear footage of the assault. Audio recordings of officers confessing to obstruction. Financial records showing systematic payoffs. This isn't circumstantial. This is a slam dunk. Then send it now. Callahan paused. And Derek, watch your back. Men like Thornton don't go down easy. And they don't go down alone. Derek spent the next hour compiling his evidence into a secure package. The video footage, the audio recordings, the financial records, Webb's files, his own documentation of every threat and intimidation attempt. At 9:45 a.m., he sent it all to Callahan through an encrypted channel. Then he made one more call. Ruth Gibson answered on the first ring. Agent Carter. Her voice was tight with worry. I heard about Marcus Webb. Is it true he's in critical condition? Derek's voice was heavy. But he got us what we needed before they got to him. The footage safe. Along with enough evidence to put Briggs Patterson and everyone connected to them behind bars for decades. Ruth let out a breath that sounded like a prayer. Thank God. Thank God. I need one more thing from you, Ruth. Derek continued. The assault happened in your diner. That makes you a key witness. When this goes to trial, we're going to need your testimony. You don't even have to ask. Ruth's voice was fierce. I've been waiting 20 years to see those bastards get what they deserve. I'll testify in front of the whole world if that's what it takes. It might be dangerous. They know you've been helping me. I'm 63 years old, Agent Carter. I've lived my whole life watching bad men do bad things to good people. If standing up to them is dangerous, then I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. Derek smiled for the first time in days. Thank you, Ruth. Thank me when it's over. Just make sure it ends right. Derek drove home at 10:30 a.m. He hadn't slept in over 30 hours. His eyes burned, his body ached, but his mind was sharp-focused, running on adrenaline and determination. Monica met him at the door. The relief on her face lasted only a second before she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. Derek? My God, you look terrible. I feel worse. Derek pulled her into a hug. But it's working. Everything's coming together. What do you mean? I mean the case isn't dead. Derek pulled back, holding her shoulders. I found new evidence. Better evidence. I talked to the head of the FBI's Public Corruption Task Force this morning. He's reviewing everything personally. Within 48 hours, we could have federal authorization to move. Monica's eyes filled with tears. Really? After everything they did? After they destroyed our evidence? After Webb? They made mistakes, Monica. Derek's voice was fierce. They got overconfident. They thought they could silence everyone, but they couldn't. And now they're going to pay. Jalen appeared at the top of the stairs. Dad Derek looked up at his son. The bruise on Jalen's face had faded almost completely, but Derek knew the psychological wounds would take much longer to heal. Come here, son. Jalen came downstairs slowly, his eyes searching his father's face. Is it true? About Deputy Webb? Derek nodded. He was hurt badly. But he gave us what we needed before it happened. He helped us. He risked everything to help us. Derek's voice was thick with emotion, because he believed in doing the right thing, because he couldn't stand by and watch corruption win anymore. Jalen's eyes glistened. Is he going to be okay? I don't know. Derek put his hand on Jalen's shoulder. But I know his sacrifice won't be wasted. We have evidence now that can bring down everyone responsible. Briggs, the chief, the judge, even the man funding all of it. So they're going to be arrested soon. Derek squeezed his son's shoulder. Very soon. For a long moment, none of them spoke. They just stood there, the three of them, holding on to each other and on to hope. Then Derek's phone buzzed. Callahan. Derek answered immediately. Tell me. The evidence is solid. Callahan's voice was all business. better than solid. This is one of the cleanest corruption cases I've seen in 20 years. I'm authorizing emergency intervention. When dawn, day after tomorrow. We'll coordinate with state police we've vetted. Full tactical team. Simultaneous arrests at the station and at the homes of key players. Thornton. Him too. Callahan paused. Derek, you did it. You built an airtight case under impossible conditions. I've never seen anything like it. I had help. Derek's voice was quiet. Good people who risked everything. Then make sure their sacrifice means something. We're bringing the hammer down. These people won't know what hit them. The call ended. Derek looked at Monica and Jalen, both staring at him with wide eyes. It's happening. Derek's voice broke slightly. Federal task force. Day after tomorrow. They're taking everyone down. Jalen's face transformed. The fear and doubt that had lived in his eyes for days melted away, replaced by something that looked like wonder. They're actually going to arrest him. All of them. Derek pulled his son close. Every single person who hurt you. Every person who tried to cover it up. Every person who threatened us. Monica covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. It's really over. Not yet. Derek's eyes were still hard. Not until they're all in handcuffs. But the end is coming. The next 36 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Derek worked with Callahan's team remotely, providing detailed information about patrol schedules, building layouts, and which officers might resist arrest. He identified the most dangerous players, mapped out escape routes they might try to use, anticipated every possible complication. Meanwhile, Monica kept Jalen close to home. They didn't go anywhere alone. They didn't answer the door for anyone they didn't recognize. They lived like people under siege, which they essentially were. But there was hope now, real hope, and it made everything bearable. At 8:15 p.m. the night before the raid, Derek's phone buzzed with one final unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Almost. Last Chance Carter. The familiar smooth voice. Call it off. Take your family and leave town. We'll let you go. No consequences. Derek laughed. Actually laughed. You have no idea what's coming, do you? What's coming is your destruction. The voice lost its smoothness. You think you can take on Charles Thornton? He owns senators. He owns judges. He owns this entire state. He doesn't own me. Derek's voice was ice. And in about 12 hours, he's going to find out exactly what that costs. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. No. Derek's tone turned deadly. You made the biggest mistake of your life when you let Wayne Briggs touch my son. He hung up. Then he turned off his phone, gathered his family, and waited for dawn. At 4:30 a.m., Derek woke Jalen. Get dressed. We're going somewhere, where you'll see. They drove through the dark streets of Maplewood as the first hint of light began to color the eastern sky. Monica sat in the back seat with Jalen holding his hand. Derek parked across the street from the police station at 5:15 a.m. The building sat quiet in the pre-dawn darkness. Lights on inside. Officers working the night shift completely unaware of what was coming. Why are we here? Jalen asked, his voice tight. Because you deserve to see this. Derek turned to face his son. You deserve to watch them fall. At 5:45 a.m., the first unmarked federal vehicles began arriving. They came from every direction. Black SUVs with tinted windows, tactical vans, sedans carrying agents in bulletproof vests. They assembled in silent precision, surrounding the station like a noose drawing tight. Derek's phone buzzed. Callahan. We're in position. All targets located, ready to execute on your word. Derek looked at Jalen. Do it. The next word came through every law enforcement radio in the county. Execute. The word echoed through the pre-dawn darkness like a thunderclap. Execute. Black-clad federal agents emerged from every direction simultaneously. They moved with military precision, surrounding the police station in seconds. Tactical teams took positions at every entrance. Snipers set up on rooftops across the street. The building was sealed before anyone inside knew what was happening. Jalen pressed his face against the car window, his breath fogging the glass. "Dad," his voice was barely a whisper. "Is this really happening?" Derek put his hand on his son's shoulder. "Watch." The station's front doors burst open. Federal agents poured inside, weapons, drawn voices booming through the early morning air. "FBI. Everyone on the ground. Hands where we can see them. Now." Through the glass walls of the station, they could see chaos erupting. Officers scrambling, coffee cups falling, hands shooting into the air. Men who had terrorized this town for decades suddenly reduced to trembling compliance. Jalen's hand found his mother's and squeezed tight. One by one, the night shift officers were brought outside in handcuffs. Their faces showed shock, confusion, fear. The same emotions they had inflicted on countless victims over the years now reflected back at them. At 6:03 a.m., the first patrol cars began arriving for the morning shift. Officers pulled into the lot expecting another ordinary day. Instead, they found federal agents waiting with weapons drawn and handcuffs ready. Out of the vehicle, hands on your head. "What the hell is going on? You're under arrest. Civil rights violations. Conspiracy. Obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent." Derek watched as officer after officer was pulled from their cars and processed. Some went quietly, others protested. One tried to run and was tackled within 10 feet. None of them escaped. At 6:15 a.m., Chief Roy Patterson's black SUV turned into the parking lot. Derek leaned forward in his seat. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. Patterson stepped out of his vehicle, his silver hair perfectly combed, as always, his uniform crisp. He took 3 steps toward the station before 2 federal agents intercepted him. "Roy Patterson, you're under arrest." Patterson's face went white. His eyes darted around the parking lot, searching for help for allies for any way out. There was none. "This is ridiculous." His voice cracked. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir." "We do. That's exactly why we're here." The agent spun him around, pressing him against his own vehicle. The click of handcuffs was audible even from across the street. Jalen made a small sound. Half gasp, half laugh. "They got him." Jalen's voice shook. "They actually got him." Derek nodded slowly. "And we're not done yet." At 6:23 a.m., a familiar cruiser pulled into the lot. Derek's entire body went rigid. Wayne Briggs stepped out, coffee cup in hand, completely oblivious to the chaos around him. He was halfway across the parking lot before he registered what was happening. The federal agents, the handcuffed officers, the tactical teams with weapons trained. The coffee cup slipped from his fingers and shattered on the pavement. Wayne Briggs. 4 agents approached him from different directions, cutting off any possibility of escape. Briggs's face transformed. The arrogance that had defined him for 20 years crumbled into something ugly, something desperate. He reached for his weapon. "Don't." The lead agent's voice was sharp as a blade. "You reach for that gun, and you won't live to regret it." Briggs's hand hovered over his holster. His eyes were wild, calculating, searching for options that didn't exist. For a long, terrible moment, nobody moved. Then Briggs's shoulders sagged. His hand dropped to his side. "Wayne Briggs, you're under arrest for civil rights violations, assault on a minor, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and participation in a criminal enterprise. You have the right to remain silent." Briggs said nothing as they cuffed him. His jaw was clenched so tight the muscles in his neck stood out like cables. But as the agents walked him toward the transport vehicle, his eyes swept the street and found Derek's car, found Jalen's face pressed against the window. The hatred in Briggs's eyes was pure and absolute. He tried to lunge toward them, but the agents held him firm. "This isn't over, Carter." Briggs's voice was a snarl. "You hear me? This isn't over." Derek rolled down his window. "Yes." His voice carried across the parking lot, calm and certain. "It is." The transport door slammed shut on Briggs's face. Jalen exhaled a breath he hadn't known he was holding. His whole body was shaking. He looked at me. Jalen's voice trembled. Right at me, like he wanted to kill me. He can't hurt you anymore. Monica pulled him close. He can't hurt anyone anymore. But Jalen couldn't look away from the transport vehicle. Couldn't stop seeing those hate-filled eyes. Dad. He turned to Derek. What if he gets out? What if they let him go like before Derek faced his son fully? Listen to me. This isn't like before. This isn't local cops investigating themselves. This is the federal government, the FBI, the Department of Justice. These charges will stick. He's going to prison, Jalen. For a very long time. Promise. The word came out small, young. The voice of a 15-year-old boy who had learned too much about how unfair the world could be. Derek took his son's hand. I promise. At 6:45 a.m., news vans began arriving. Reporters spilled out with cameras rolling microphones, extended voices shouting questions that nobody would answer yet. The story was already spreading. Social media was exploding. A small Georgia town's police department was being dismantled in real time. Derek's phone buzzed. Callahan, Thornton's in custody. His voice was satisfied. Picked him up at his estate 20 minutes ago, along with Judge Harrison and 3 city council members. We're still executing warrants, but the main targets are all secured. Derek closed his eyes. The relief that washed through him was almost overwhelming. Casualties none. A few tried to resist, but nobody was seriously hurt. Except their pride. Webb's evidence held up better than held up. Callahan's voice warmed. We found additional documentation at Thornton's estate. Financial records he thought were secure. This case is going to set precedents, Derek. This is exactly the kind of systemic corruption takedown that reminds people why the FBI exists. Thank you, Bob. Derek's voice was thick. For believing me. For moving so fast. Thank yourself. You built this case under impossible conditions. You didn't give up when they destroyed your evidence. You didn't back down when they threatened your family. Callahan paused. I've worked with a lot of agents over the years, Derek. You're one of the best I've ever seen. The call ended. Derek sat in silence, watching federal agents continue their work. The sun was fully up now, painting the scene in harsh morning light. The parking lot full of marked cruisers and transport vehicles. The station entrance flanked by tactical teams. The steady stream of handcuffed officers being led out. Justice. Real justice. Not the twisted version that had ruled this town for decades. The real thing. Monica's hand found his. It's really over, isn't it? Derek looked at his wife. At the tears streaming down her face. At the exhaustion and relief warring in her eyes. It's really over. At 9:30 a.m., Derek drove his family to Memorial Hospital. Marcus Webb was awake. The young deputy's face was still a ruin of bruises and bandages, but his eyes were open, alert, aware. His wife Sarah sat beside the bed holding his hand. Their 2 children, a girl of 12 and a boy of 9, sat in chairs against the wall watching their father, with a mixture of fear and hope. Derek knocked softly on the open door. Webb's eyes shifted toward him. The deputy couldn't speak. The damage to his throat was too severe, but his eyes said everything. Question, hope, desperation to know. Derek stepped into the room. It's done. Webb's whole body seemed to relax. Tears spilled from his swollen eyes. Briggs is in custody. Derek continued. Patterson, Harrison, Thornton, everyone connected to them. The federal task force is still executing warrants, but the main players are all secured. Sarah Webb covered her mouth with her hand, sobbing with relief. Your evidence made this possible. Derek moved to the bedside. The recordings, the financial documents. Without what you gave us, none of this would have happened. Webb's hand moved weakly. He was trying to reach for Derek. Derek took his hand gently. You're a hero, Marcus. Derek's voice was fierce. I know it doesn't feel like it. I know what they did to you, But because of your courage, an entire corrupt system has been brought down. Children will grow up safe in this town because you risked everything." Webb's grip tightened slightly. More tears fell. "The FBI wants to talk to you when you're recovered," Derek continued. "Your testimony will be crucial for the prosecution. But there's no rush. You focus on healing. On your family." He looked at Sarah Webb. "Your husband is one of the bravest men I've ever met." Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Jalen stepped forward hesitantly. He looked at the battered man in the bed at the price Webb had paid for trying to help him. "Thank you." Jalen's voice cracked. "You didn't have to help us. You didn't even know us, but you did it anyway." Webb's eyes met Jalen's, and despite everything, despite the tubes and the bandages and the ruin of his face, the deputy managed something that almost looked like a smile. They left the hospital at 10:15 a.m. In the car, Jalen was quiet for a long moment. "Dad," he finally spoke. "What happens now?" "Now we wait for the trials." Derek pulled out of the parking lot. "The prosecution will take months, maybe years. But with the evidence we have, convictions are almost certain." "No." Jalen shook his head. "I mean to us. To our family. What happens to us?" Derek glanced at Monica, then back at his son in the rearview mirror. "I've been offered a promotion," Derek said slowly. "Head of a new task force focused on civil rights violations and police corruption, based in Atlanta." "Atlanta." Jalen's eyes widened. "We're moving. If you want to." Derek's voice was gentle. "This town has a lot of bad memories for us now. A fresh start might be good." Jalen looked out the window at the streets of Maplewood passing by. The same streets where Briggs had followed him home from school. The same town where a simple afternoon with friends had turned into a nightmare. "Yeah." Jalen nodded slowly. "I think a fresh start would be good." 1 week later, the town held a ceremony. The courthouse lawn was packed with hundreds of people. Chairs filled every available space. People stood along the edges, sat on blankets, climbed onto walls just to see. American flags fluttered in the warm breeze. A podium stood ready on a temporary stage. News cameras from across the country were rolling. Derek sat in the front row with Monica and Jalen. Ruth Gibson sat beside them, her weathered hands folded in her lap, her eyes bright with unshed tears. The Federal Task Force commander approached the podium. "Today marks a new chapter for Maplewood." His voice carried across the hushed crowd. "Following our investigation, we are announcing formal charges against 15 former members of the Maplewood Police Department, including former Chief Roy Patterson. Additional charges have been filed against Judge William Harrison, real estate developer Charles Thornton, and 3 city council members." A murmur rippled through the audience. The evidence gathered was extensive and damning. The commander continued. "We discovered systematic abuse spanning decades. Destroyed complaint records, manufactured evidence, witness intimidation, financial fraud. This case represents everything that damages trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve." He paused, turning toward Derek. "But today isn't just about what was wrong. It's about what was right. About one man who stood up and showed us what integrity looks like." Derek felt Monica's hand tighten on his. Special Agent Derek Carter could have handled this personally, could have sought private revenge. Instead, he chose justice. He methodically built a case that exposed not just individual wrongdoing, but an entire system of corruption. The commander's voice rang with conviction. "The FBI is promoting Agent Carter to lead our new Civil Rights Task Force. He'll have expanded resources and authority to continue this vital work across the southeastern United States." Applause erupted. It lasted several minutes. When it finally quieted, a city council member approached the podium with a ceremonial document. In recognition of the courage shown by Jalen Carter. Her voice was thick with emotion. "We are establishing the Marcus Webb Resilience Scholarship Fund with an initial endowment of $100,000. This annual scholarship will support young people who demonstrate moral courage in the face of injustice." Jalen's face went slack with shock. A scholarship named after Deputy Webb furthermore. The council member continued. We are designating Ruth Gibson's diner as a historic site of civic courage. Mrs. Gibson's refusal to be intimidated, her preservation of crucial evidence, and her immediate response to injustice helped spark this transformation. Ruth pressed her hand to her heart, tears finally spilling down her weathered cheeks. The mayor stepped up next. His usual political polish was gone, replaced by genuine emotion. We failed our community for too long. We allowed fear and complacency to let corruption flourish. But today, we stand together to say never again. He turned to face the Carters directly. Derek, Monica, Jalen, you showed us what real strength looks like. Not the false strength of bullies with badges, but the true strength of standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. In the audience, Jalen's friends Deshawn and Marcus beamed with pride. Mrs. Patterson, the woman whose grandson Briggs had hurt years ago, wept openly. Business owners who had suffered under the corrupt regime nodded with vindication. Decades of suppressed hope finally blooming on their faces. The task force commander returned to the microphone. Starting tomorrow, federal investigators will begin meeting with any community members who wish to report past abuses. Every complaint will be heard. Every incident will be investigated. The wall of silence is down. The crowd stirred with something that felt like electricity. Neighbors who had barely spoken before were embracing. Young and old, black and white, all united in this moment of transformation. Derek. The commander gestured toward the stage. Would you like to say a few words? Derek stood slowly. His legs felt unsteady as he walked to the podium. He looked out at the sea of faces. The hope, the tears, the healing that was just beginning. He cleared his throat. A week ago, my son was assaulted in a diner for the crime of laughing with his friends. His voice was steady but thick with emotion. The officer who struck him believed he was untouchable, that the system would protect him, that power and money and corruption would shield him from consequences. Derek's eyes found Jalen in the front row. He was wrong. The crowd was absolutely silent. Justice isn't automatic. Derek continued. It doesn't just happen because it should. Justice requires people willing to stand up, to speak out, to risk everything for what's right. He looked at Ruth Gibson. People like Mrs. Gibson, who refused to be intimidated when a violent man threatened her business. He looked toward the direction of the hospital. People like Deputy Marcus Webb, who risked his life to expose corruption from the inside. His voice hardened with conviction. And people like every single one of you who refused to let fear win. Who came forward with your stories? Who trusted that this time would be different? Derek gripped the podium. They told us the system couldn't be changed, that things had always been this way. That power was untouchable. He leaned forward. They were wrong, because the real power was never with them. The real power is with us. With everyone who refuses to accept injustice, who stands up even when it's dangerous, who believes that right will eventually triumph over wrong. His voice rose. Today Maplewood is free. Not because of me, not because of the FBI, but because a community finally said enough. And when people stand together against corruption, corruption cannot survive. The applause that followed shook the ground. Derek returned to his seat. Jalen grabbed him in a fierce hug. Monica wrapped her arms around both of them. Ruth Gibson reached over and squeezed Derek's hand, her face streaming with tears. After the ceremony, people lined up to shake their hands, to thank them, to share their own stories of abuse, finally ready to be heard. An elderly man approached Jalen. My grandson went through something similar 15 years ago. His voice trembled. We tried to fight. We couldn't. But you and your father, you finished what we couldn't. Jalen didn't know what to say. He just nodded, accepting the weight of what had been accomplished. A young mother with a little girl approached Derek. My daughter asks me every day if the bad police are gone. She looked down at her child. Now I can finally tell her yes. Derek crouched down to the little girl's level. The bad police are gone, sweetheart, and good people are going to make sure they never come back. The crowd gradually dispersed as evening approached. Derek stood with his family on the courthouse lawn, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Dad, Jalen's voice was quiet. Do you think things will really change? Derek considered the question carefully. I think change is hard, he said finally, and slow. And it doesn't happen just because we want it to. But today proved something important. It proved that when people refuse to accept injustice, justice becomes possible. He put his arm around his son's shoulders. The world isn't fair, Jalen. It never has been. There will always be people who abuse their power, who hurt others, who think they're above consequences. His voice strengthened. But there will also always be people willing to stand up against them, to fight for what's right, to protect the innocent, and hold the guilty accountable. He looked down at his son. Today we were those people. And I hope someday when you see injustice, you'll remember this. Remember that you have the power to make a difference. That one person standing up can change everything. Jalen leaned into his father's embrace. I will, Dad. I promise I will. Monica joined them, wrapping her arms around both. For a long moment, the Carter family stood together in the fading light. Behind them, a town was healing. A corrupt system had fallen. Justice had been served. And somewhere in a federal detention facility, Wayne Briggs sat alone in a cell, finally facing the consequences he had escaped for 20 years. The Carters walked to their car as the last light faded from the sky. Their work in Maplewood was done. But their mission was just beginning. Because in towns across America, other families were suffering under other corrupt systems. Other children were being hurt. Other witnesses were being silenced. And now Derek Carter had the authority, the resources, and the determination to help them. He started the car and pulled away from the courthouse. In the rearview mirror, Jalen watched Maplewood shrink into the distance. Then he turned forward, toward Atlanta, toward the future, toward whatever came next. The fight for justice never truly ends. But on this day in this town, justice had won. And that victory would echo through generations, because courage is contagious. And once ignited, the fire of justice cannot be extinguished.